Is XRP about to experience the biggest supply squeeze we've ever witnessed? I managed to grab two separate clips where Zach Rector breaks down this whole situation. We're also going to dig into the actual numbers, how much XRP is still available on exchanges, and what happens when this incoming ETF demand hits the market. Let's cut right to the chase here. Unknown DLT posted something that really caught my attention. Wake up, people. They're going to cause the biggest supply shock in history. That is why Ripple has not allowed XRP to enter the discovery price, so that institutions can do some with ETFs, which further amplifies the supply shock. The price is going to explode like never before. Right after that, Zach shares his analysis on what looks like an XRP supply shock that's playing out in slow motion as we speak. Take a listen.
Slowly, then all of a sudden, people are going to realize that there's way less XRP available for cross-border payments than they've been thinking and led to believe. And what I'm talking about is when Brad Garlinghouse, the CEO of Ripple, is talking about taking 14% of Swift's activity. Well, the XRP that's getting parked in these ETFs cannot be used for cross-border payments or liquidity anywhere. And so what we're watching right now is the supply shock in slow motion. Retail, distracted by today's price going down. Institutions couldn't care less. In fact, they're actually jumping on this opportunity to load up on XRP. So this is the first day of the Bitwise XRP ETF being live, and it comes in here at just shy of 26 million in volume. Canary adds 17 million of volume, bringing today's tally to $43 million of volume between the two XRP ETFs. Chad Steingraber says we're going to see 3 million XRP acquired for Canary, 8 million for Bitwise. This party's just getting started.
We're barely scratching the surface here. He absolutely nailed it with that take. Look, right now we've only got two ETFs that made it through approval. Fast forward to the end of this month, and we're talking about 6 or 7 total ETFs in play. So what's the real story behind this XRP supply shock everyone keeps mentioning? What are the actual theories people are discussing? I wanted to really get into the details of what's being said out there. XRP supply shock refers to the possibility that the readily available liquid supply of XRP could become extremely scarce, leading to rapid price increases if demand rises significantly. This theory has gained growing traction among analyst traders, and especially as institutional interest in ETF discussions intensify. Let's talk about the main theories driving this supply shock conversation. ETF and institutional accumulation. One major narrative is that institutional investors or new spot ETFs could buy up billions of XRP, effectively locking up supply in cold storage and significantly reducing liquid inventory available for everyday traders. Some models suggest that even a 5% supply lockup could drive a massive supply squeeze, potentially pushing prices dramatically higher. Talks about escrow and token burns. XRP has a unique dynamic due to Ripple's escrow. About 35 billion XRP remain locked, released in predictable monthly increments, about 1 billion every month. The data shows approximately 70% of that amount, meaning about 700 million tokens, consistently gets relocked after each release. Certain months have bucked that trend with higher releases and lower relocks, but that's basically what we've observed overall. In 2024, the pattern held pretty steady with roughly 80% going back into escrow. That locked supply sits there for another 48 months. Some community theories suggest that burning a portion of the escrow, for example, a hypothetical 20% burn, would reduce the supply. Look, I'm just being real with you. This scenario isn't playing out. Walk through the logic here. Imagine you're Ripple with 10 billion, possibly 15 billion XRP in your treasury. A 20% burn means destroying 20 billion XRP. Would you actually incinerate $40 billion just like that? Yeah, parts of the community might be cheering for it, but this makes zero strategic sense for Ripple's position. Consider who we're dealing with here. Ripple has recruited absolute geniuses to run their operation. These people aren't going to waste that kind of value. We're not talking about your typical DeFi project that has to eliminate huge token quantities just to get people interested in buying, right? They know the XRP supply is going to matter tremendously down the road, and their track record shows they've managed it responsibly. True circulating and liquid supply. Analysts note, While XRP officially has close to 100 billion in total supply, the real liquid available supply to purchase at any moment could be less than 3 to 3.5 billion XRP. That number keeps popping up everywhere I look. Exchange data shows roughly 3 billion sitting there available right now. That's the real story most people miss. Deflationary pressure and transaction fees. Over time, transaction fees on the XRP ledger are permanently burned. Here's where I need to pump the brakes on some wild theories floating around. This burn thing gets way too much hype. Unless they completely overhaul how much XRP vanishes per transaction, which would break the entire model, the burn stays irrelevant. Someone tells you XRP's burn rate is your ticket to riches? Hand them a calculator. Show them reality instead of hopium. Check this out. 13 years of the ledger running. Total burned, 14 million XRP against 100 billion. That's pocket change in the big picture. Want to blow your mind even more? Imagine XRP processing literally every payment worldwide. Every coffee purchase, every mortgage, every salary deposit, everything. You'd still only torch 30 to 40 million XRP annually. Bottom line, stop counting on the burn mechanism as your wealth builder. The numbers prove it's practically decoration. Focus on what actually moves the needle instead of chasing myths about deflationary magic that doesn't exist at scale. Tuck that into your brain's back pocket. Are any of these theories closer being true? Spot ETF proposals and institutional interests are moving from theory to active market reality, with multiple analysts warning that conventional models may underestimate how quickly available supply could be absorbed. Experts point out that ETFs or institutions buy XRP directly from exchanges rather than over the counter. The impact on liquid supply could be extreme and sudden, since most XRP is not held on exchanges. The article rambles a bit about escrow releases happening monthly and the whole burn situation. We already demolished that myth earlier, so no point rehashing it. All right, that's the scoop I wanted to drop on you. And wouldn't you know it, Chad's jumping back in with his 2 cents. Take a listen to this.
Slowly, then all of a sudden, people are going to realize that there's way less XRP available for cross-border payments than they've been thinking and led to believe. And what I'm talking about is when Brad Garlinghouse, the CEO of Ripple, is talking about taking 14% of Swift's activity. Well, the XRP that's getting parked in these ETFs cannot be used for cross-border payments or liquidity anywhere. And so what we're watching right now is the supply shock in slow motion. Retail, distracted by today's price going down. Institutions couldn't care less. In fact, they're actually jumping on this opportunity to load up on XRP. So this is the first day of the Bitwise XRP ETF being live, and it comes in here at just shy of 26 million in volume. Canary adds 17 million of volume, bringing today's tally to $43 million of volume between the 2 XRP ETFs. Chad Steingraber says we're going to see 3 million XRP acquired for Canary, 8 million for Bitwise. This party's just getting started.
They weren't totally identical. I noticed some variations between them. Could be he shot it twice, who knows? Wait, hold on. Chad Steingraber actually released this? So what he's got here is months listed on the left side, then XRP supply, the supply shown in billions, relative reduction percentages, price increases, and where the XRP price might land. Now listen, before you get too excited about these numbers at the bottom, you need to pause for a second. We're talking absolutely insane figures here. For this to work out, you'd need everything to fall into place just right. We're talking nonstop demand, people buying XRP consistently. The price would have to remain stable right up until the moment it explodes. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of stuff in these numbers that just doesn't add up when you compare it to what's really going on out there. Just hang on a second and hear me out though. Picture this scenario. What if exchanges basically run dry of XRP? Like we're talking down to 100 million, maybe even 50 million XRP just sitting there, and everyone's holding tight, refusing to sell anything. When that happens, man, the price is going to go absolutely bananas. Here's why. When new money starts pouring in, your market cap multiplier shoots into the thousands. There's basically nothing available to buy compared to that 65 billion XRP floating around in circulation. So yeah, could we see some absolutely mind-blowing numbers? For sure. But you've got to understand something. For this whole thing to actually go down the way we're imagining, we'd need some legitimately insane developments to happen. My gut tells me the majority of this unfolds before 2030 rolls around. That's the time frame I've locked into my thinking. So here's my game plan. I'm getting up every morning, putting in the work, digging through all the data, absorbing everything I possibly can, and then bringing all that knowledge straight back to you guys. We're in this thing side by side. I can't even tell you how stoked I am. And when we finally make it, oh man, we're throwing the kind of party that people will be talking about for decades. XRP holders already know how to celebrate properly. Every last one of you has a spot on the guest list, you hear me? XRP supply shock, think long term. My thesis on XRP scarcity, roughly 18 pending XRP ETFs. They all put $50 million in a day. XRP supply would be scarce in 6 to 9 months. The only way for price is up. All right, so here's what's happening right now, and honestly, it's kind of insane when you look at the numbers. Check this out. 53 million XRP absorbed by Bitwise on the first day. Day one. We are watching institutions vacuum up XRP at a pace most people aren't even paying attention to yet. These ETFs need to be funded, and guess where that supply is coming from? Now here's where it gets even crazier. By the end of the week, I'll be tracking 7 spot XRP ETFs. At some point, it's going to be too much to track at once. I will do my best, but the goal is the cumulative total, projecting it out for the broader picture. Look, I have to give massive props to Chad because tracking all of this is no joke. The guy is out here doing the heavy lifting for the entire community, putting in real work so we can all stay informed. If his content is helping you see the bigger picture, go drop him a follow, hit that subscribe button, whatever you can do to support him. He absolutely deserves it. So here's the full timeline because I know you're itching to see when everything actually happens. I've got it all mapped out right in front of me. October's loaded, then we slide into November with even more action. The 24th is the big day. Franklin Templeton plus a handful of others are going live, and that's basically tomorrow. This weekend is shaping up to be absolutely wild. And don't worry, I'll be glued to this stuff, making sure you don't miss a thing. Now let me hit you with something interesting that's happening as we speak. Canary's wrapping up in about 2 hours, and Bitwise is pulling in roughly $26 million today. Here's what blows my mind. The market's getting hammered right now, yet close to $30 million is still flooding into these 2 ETFs alone. Stack the rest of them on top? We might be looking at something pretty spectacular unfolding. Oh, and I pulled this gem of a conversation with Brad Garlinghouse, Tom Lee, and Jeremy Allaire from around a month back. Wanted to include it because it connects a lot of dots and honestly just makes this whole video way more worth your time. Take a listen to this one.
And Bitcoin is the ultimate hard asset. Maybe a combination of Bitcoin and gold will save your savings from this pernicious debasement that's going on across all the currencies, across all the countries.
Have a global consensus about crypto. Even in this conversation, and I agree that it still is early, partly because there is not a global consensus about some of these things.
I agree.
And I think some of the use cases, we're still extremely early in terms of scaled use cases. Circle is certainly one example that has started to have a scaled use case around a stable coin. But I think the crypto industry, I agree, the next 16 years, I think will be better than the last 16 years because you'll finally see applications emerging that up until now have just been the store of value story or speculation.
Okay. I just was told the prince is coming, so we're going to actually have to end this conversation soon. So perhaps to wrap up, I could just go around really quickly. Jeremy, do you have any final words on this topic?
Obviously, we're coming at it from a very different vantage point. I actually agree with the consensus between the Bitcoin adherents. I think that everything they say is accurate. We also have the need for everyday medium of exchange that can be used at scale, at internet scale. And I think what we've seen happen with dollar digital currencies, with stable coins, is effectively creating a new internet-based infrastructure for fiat. And fiat will continue, but we're seeing essentially the same technological chains that happen for data, communications, information, software being brought to money, and we're seeing a reconstruction of fiat on a full reserve basis. So a sound money principle where you can have safe, fully reserved dollars, and you can transact them effectively at internet scale, at internet speed, at virtually no cost. And that is converging, as you noted, with the machine economy, with machine programmed money. And I think I would share also the view that we're still in the very early stages.
Dude, this whole thing was absolutely bonkers. Picture this. Everyone flies in from all over the place, ready for what should have been an incredible discussion. Look at who was there. Brad Garlinghouse in the house. Jeremy Allaire pulled up. You've got these legendary Bitcoin OGs who turned pocket change into billions, plus Tom Lee bringing the charts. This panel had everything lined up to be absolutely legendary. Instead, it turned into the shortest crypto talk in history. What a letdown. All right, I'm done venting. Let me pivot here and get your thoughts on something. Supply dynamics and all these wild theories everyone's cooking up lately. What's your gut telling you about the road ahead? Think we're about to break through the ceiling and never look back? Or is this setting up to be one of those classic buy the rumor, sell the news situations? I really want to hear where your mind's at. As for me, there's literally no scenario where I'm parting with my XRP right now. Price dips to $1.75 or $1.50. Perfect. That's basically the universe sending me a flashing neon sign that says, buy more right now. This type of setup comes around maybe once if you're lucky. So yeah, every extra bit of money I can find is getting thrown straight into XRP without hesitation. Thanks for hanging out with me today. Catch you on the next upload.